There is a myth that children and adults don't enjoy learning new things, but video game developers have long experienced what science now explains, and that brings us to the first important insight. The brain is a learning machine, dedicated to learning, needing learned knowledge for it to survive, and mostly learning from the mistakes we make. Memories of past experiences are stored to ensure we don't make the same mistakes while we are out seeking rewards to ensure our survival. There is no single memory building site in the brain. Memories are stored in a variety of locations. At the same time, the brain is traversed by numerous structures and pathways dedicated to ensure we acquire the necessary knowledge, and that we use this knowledge as a skill to solve problems and to innovate. You might think of learning in the abstract as thoughts and ideas, but our second insight reminds us learning is a physical process. For example, each time we learn a new dance step, it is reflected as a change in our physical brains. This is because a memory is drawn from a neuron or a neuronal circuit that fires at a certain rate when called upon. Consider the hippocampus. This is where memories are made. Deep in the hippocampus, we find cells that fire in circuits such as this one. Connected by synapses, chemicals called neurotransmitters are released to convey the message from one neuron to another. This completes the circuit. As our knowledge of an item of information is consolidated, the connections or synapses increase in number and strength. This represents an increased ability to learn new knowledge, but also an increased ability to consolidate the knowledge. Remember, the brain is physical. Learning is a physical process, and remembering requires activation of already formed neurons and neuronal circuits. This brings us to the third insight. The hippocampus as the center of new brain cell formation is profoundly important. In fact, it can be said that learning starts in the hippocampus. The exciting thing is we can improve our learning capabilities by enhancing the physical process of memory formation. Let's take a look at these fascinating structures. We have one on the left and one on the right. The left hippocampus seems to deal with verbal memories, like speech, reading and writing, while the right hippocampus is dedicated to spatial memories, like physical constructs in space, shapes and sizes of objects. On command, neurons in the hippocampus secrete chemicals called growth factors. They do this to enhance connection formation called synaptogenesis, and to strengthen these connections to form permanent knowledge. Current neuroscience shows that drivers of brain performance like the right exercise, sleep and silencing of the mind enhance our ability to form memories through stimulation of growth factors that in turn enhance synaptogenesis. Unfortunately, chronic stress, emotional trauma and lack of sleep as examples directly reduce learning capabilities by affecting the integrity of the memory-forming cells in the hippocampus. This brings us to Insight 4 that asks, how do we learn new information? First, the prefrontal cortex in the frontal part of our brains directs our attention to the information that needs to be learned. If we have to remember a list of items that is only needed in the moment and doesn't need storage, our brains register these as working memory. This type of memory is not facilitated by the hippocampus, but is a function of the prefrontal cortex. An example of this type of memory is remembering a telephone number. You use it, and seconds later it is completely forgotten. But if the learned information needs to be stored as knowledge, it is sent to the hippocampus, where it goes into an interesting relationship with the long-term memory sites of the brain, where knowledge will be stored and drawn upon to solve problems and to innovate. We believe today that the long-term memory sites are located in the same vicinity as the brain's primary sensory sites, which share the same type of sensory information. For example, the knowledge that a tomato is red is stored in the vicinity of the primary sensory site for vision that recognizes the color as red. A truly fascinating aspect of this is that the long-term memory formation mostly takes place during sleep. This is what makes sleep for longer than 6 hours a night so important for brain performance. Finally, insight reveals that your brain builds new knowledge on existing knowledge. This means that it actively seeks to associate new material with existing concepts and patterns. The most basic of these concepts and patterns has very likely been inherited and built in during the early years of life. One reason why optimal early childhood brain development is an essential process for success in life. Learning is an important higher-order driver. Through learning, we form knowledge, the building blocks for creative problem-solving and innovation. Learning and innovation together are major conditions for thriving. In a nutshell, your brain constantly seeks out the new. It craves to learn so it may thrive. Learning is a physical process. It mainly takes place at the synapses, the junctions between neurons where information is relayed. Synapses change when we learn something new. They increase in number and strength, making it easier to remember information as it is recalled along already formed neurons and neuronal circuits. The hippocampus functions as the memory hub. Combined with its ability to form new brain cells, we can improve our learning capabilities through exercise, sleep, and through silencing the mind. These lifestyle practices encourage the release of growth factors that in turn enhance synaptogenesis, the formation of connections between neurons. Quick recall of short-term information, like a telephone number, is facilitated by the prefrontal cortex. Information that needs to be stored as knowledge is sent to the hippocampus, from where it goes to the various long-term memory sites of the brain, all to be drawn upon later as our brain builds new knowledge on existing knowledge. Learning is essential for us, not only to survive, but to thrive.